I thought maybe it would be cool to get all of these opinions. There's these five folks here. There's a lot of opportunity here to talk about certain things. One of the things that has really come up lately is TikTok and Microsoft wanting to buy TikTok. I'm just curious. I know, I don't know, Vala, the vendor thing might prohibit you from saying some things. We hope not, but we understand if it does. I'm just going to throw it out there. Whoever wants, we'll go with Ray. Do you think? Do you think this is going to be a good? If let's say Microsoft does buy TikTok, is that a good combination? Do you think that will be a game changer of sorts in the industry?
So here's the thing, right? Of all the tech giants and the digital giants that are out there, Microsoft is the only one that can actually make that purchase. The rest have antitrust issues, right? Facebook can't pick them up, right? That's part of the challenge. We have an issue with Google picking up or Amazon picking up if they wanted to. So there are antitrust concerns. Microsoft isn't in that B2C market. Now, some people think it's about ad tech, and it's not about ad tech. It's about building a bigger consumer base, a bigger and younger consumer base to actually complement their social graph. And that's the game that they're trying to play. That's part of the reason they bought LinkedIn. It was to get to the B2B. They bought GitHub. They started to do things around Xbox and game developers as well. So they're trying to get to a younger base and hit that market. Now, the challenge, though, is, the company's valued somewhere between 10 and 40 billion. And depending where the cut goes or what happens with this, it could either be a really good deal or it can quickly become a bad deal. Plus, there's a number of lawsuits going on in terms of, the way they've use their technology. Other people are claiming that their patents are being violated, and it's just a mess. So I think, for Microsoft, it'll be a great deal if they can pick it up for on the cheap. And, if they can't, well, TikTok just dies and someone will have to build a new one.
I'm really curious to see, though, how it changes the dynamic for Microsoft, because they've got a sort of moral high ground at the moment when it comes to consumer data privacy. And buying into TikTok would really seriously change that equation. So I'm sure it's something they're thinking about. And obviously, we won't hear what they think until and if there is an actual purchase. But it's going to be interesting to see how that changes their overall position.
Well, the thing with Microsoft, if you have to go back to even pre-Satya days, is the one thing that they did literally better than any other tech giants in their particular universe was end-to-end consumer to business ecosystem, right? They had that no one else did, really. I mean, you can't argue for Sony because that can handle the end-to-end there, but doesn't have the business side the way Microsoft does. Certainly Apple doesn't either, not on the business side, right? Apple has some penetration in some areas, but nothing like Microsoft's. And they've always had, at least, they've always had sort of, it's a funny view, because on the one hand, they understand it, but on the second hand, they don't really know it from the standpoint of that end-to-end, meaning, yeah, we know we can do that, but they don't actually they've never really had a fully coordinated effort to extend the ecosystem as a whole. It's just been piece that they would drop in and then it wouldn't pull and tie. So, for example, I mean, just one of the examples is I still contend to this day that while I thought LinkedIn is a perfectly valid acquisition, they're wasting a lot of its potential by not. And the single thing they could do to open it up would be just open the API up. Stop playing with it as a tool, so that people will buy licenses of Sales Navigator, which I still think is a piece of crap, right? So, the thing is that TikTok's in effect on the consumer side of that ecosystem is in a similar position, right? You can to Ray's point, and actually yours too, Nicole, on the privacy issue, which could actually derail the whole thing. But on to Ray's point, on that level, it's a potentially great acquisition, depending on what they pay, of course. But it's a potentially great acquisition. But a lot of it has to do with what Microsoft really decides to do with them. They so far on these super big ones, which again I think they're good acquisitions. I really do. They just don't exploit it to the fullest potential they have. They just don't, and they should. So company that doesn't get it.
Yeah, I see two issues. One is the be careful what you ask for side, because right now Microsoft has very limited concern about, for example, with LinkedIn, like what's being said on their platform, the way, Facebook, for example, on Instagram are dealing with, and YouTube dealing with, hate speech and things like that. And so TikTok does have issues with that. So does Microsoft, are they prepared to take that on? That's one side. And the other side is technology. What exactly do they get? Do they get access to the secret sauce or do they not? Because if they get access to the platform, but not the technology that runs, that's like the magic behind it, is it really a good deal?
Mm.
When you think about digital monetization models, I mean, there's you do ad, you do search, you do goods, you do services, you do membership, and you do subscriptions. And someone pointed out this could be an advertising play. It could if Microsoft was serious about advertising. I mean, they totally messed up Aquant, right? Aquant was supposed to be their ad networks, put that into play, and it didn't work. And so the question is really, have they learned from their acquisitions? Like Yammer was a horrible acquisition. LinkedIn it's a horrible acquisition. Let's be honest. Skype was a bad one too. I mean, they did nothing with it for 10 years. I mean, it's just, the question is why are they purchasing the property and what are they going to get out of it? And it doesn't seem very clear, but if they want a social presence and a social graph, it makes a lot of sense. Now, there's a lot of conversations about Apple potentially buying, TikTok as well and in the running, but it doesn't fit their model. Apple doesn't want to be in the ad model. They want to be in subscribers and membership growth, and that would unless they're going to give it away for free, right? And and that would mean maybe if people bought more iPhones, right, maybe we could get more usage, but they don't need that, right? So it just doesn't make sense there. So I think if Microsoft doesn't buy TikTok, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to them.
What's really interesting is I think Microsoft tried to compete with Amazon and try to build out a network like what Amazon bought with Twitch. They threw in the towel on that one. And now I think they're working with Facebook. Seems like that's just not their area of expertise, or I don't know if this is where they may want to go, but it doesn't feel like this is something that they've been good at trying to put together.
But Xbox is amazing, right? What they've done with Xbox is just incredible, right? I mean,
that was a great purchase that worked, but they haven't really done a whole lot of integrating that into the mothership either.
No, and I think they've done well precisely because they have not tried to integrate it into the mothership, right? So
yes,
Alan's great question there.
Right.
Yeah, that's what happened.
You know what? I think that is I mean, buying the pieces to the puzzle are great, but putting that puzzle together is a whole other thing. And I don't know, some things it just doesn't feel like Microsoft has really done great. It's not just them. There's some other companies have been trying to do this stuff too and haven't been able to pull it together.
I think there was a story at some point of some rumors when Microsoft and another company was having some great relationships, and they talked about a partnership and maybe an acquisition, and this wonderful CEO explained to Satya how B2B2C works, right? And why it's important to have some of those pieces. And instead of that company acquiring LinkedIn, Microsoft went in and took the deal and then scuttled the merger. Those who are in the inside know exactly what I'm talking about. But that kind of set off that notion in Satya's head that they want to go to B2B2C and how to get to younger users, how to get to younger demographics. And I think that was instrumental in one part of that. And so if this is really about, and you flashed something, Brent, earlier, I couldn't see it fast enough, about, this is TikTok plus Minecraft plus Xbox. Alan's got a great point. Yeah, Alan's got a great point. One of these days, Alan's going to come over and become an analyst. But the idea is, that is a great way to get that set up. Right. And that gets you some of the consumer graph data that they don't have. And the belief at Microsoft is really how do we get Teams to connect to everything else? They hope Teams is the glue that brings all the disparate pieces. So there's something there. We'll see if they actually fully execute out a B2B2C strategy where, the individual can be an enterprise. The individual can be part of a consumer play. The individual can have another role. But that's been very hard for most companies to pull off. Amazon is probably the closest to trying to get there. Apple, maybe the next one. And then, of course, Google. So we'll see.
I think on the Microsoft side, though, they have the tools and they have the ability, and they even have a number of the personnel they need who think that way. But it's been a historic issue. I mean, look, again, I identified an ecosystem of the end-to-end consumer to business ecosystem in 2006, and they even had the tools sitting there then, right? But the biggest problem is how you utilize the tools you have when you have them, and how you establish those kind of links. I mean, the problem with Xbox plus, say, TikTok plus Minecraft is plus, right? It's not a plus. right? That's the thing. Then you just have a bunch of pieces being added together. That's not how an ecosystem works. And the reality is with the Microsoft, I would say one of the, I don't know, this is a completely made up number, but 2 or 3 companies on the planet that could actually pull that off, right? And I don't think they've ever really exploited their opportunity to the nth it could be exploited. Years ago, I was on it was very weirdly, but I was on the steering committee for Surface when it was first being released as a hardware device, right? And I was on the advisory board, and they picked me out of a hat, basically, I think. But anyway, I remember we had this discussion, and this is indicative of what I'm saying here. We had this discussion about the launch date at the only advisory board meeting we ever had at the headquarters. And they were going to, I remember they were going to launch it. I forget what year exactly that was now, but it's like 2007, maybe. But still, it was a piece of hardware on a Vista operating system, right? So
first of all, Vista.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Right. It was super cool to look at. I'll tell you that. But so they're announcing the launch date, and they say it's going to be like June 7th. And I'm sitting there with the guy who runs the consumer division of Microsoft, and I said to him, "Well, wait, you can't do that." He goes, "Why?" He said, "That's the date that Microsoft Dynamics is launching its actual major release, and you're going to completely destroy the release." And he goes, "I swear to God," he goes, "I didn't know that." Right. One end just has no idea what the other end is even doing.
But Paul, that I think is indicative of the bigger problem here. All the pieces are great, but the problem is just putting them together at a high level doesn't buy you anything. You have to really deeply understand what the connections are between those things that really matter for customers, and not just like generic blob groups of customers, but actual customers with identifiable priorities and needs and desires. And that's when you get to the interesting stuff. And it is incredibly difficult to do that on a very large scale. It's impossible to manage. And so I don't know how you overcome that challenge in a company that's big enough to actually have all the pieces. Because unless you're sort of, to some degree, doing this from the ground up, when you're actually doing it from a needs-driven, priority-driven kind of basis, I don't know how you get to those connections that are actually meaningful across the whole portfolio.
I mean, ultimately, I don't think you do. I actually think you decide what you're going to be able to do, and then you do that, right? To me, there's no way that anyone can actually accomplish the end-to-end ecosystem at that level and be successful. It's just too big a job. So you make decisions of, we'll do this, we won't do this, we'll do this, we won't do this. But you don't, if this is something that some other division's doing at the same time, you don't like deliberately, or not deliberately, actually not deliberately, one way or the other, you know enough to not effectively sabotage the effort of the other one accidentally, right? So that's just a representative example. I'm very bullish on Microsoft. I actually really like what they're doing now.
Oh, yeah.
And I find Satya's vision is really very appealing to me. And he does have an ecosystem platform vision. But accomplishing the full end-to-end range is impossible, actually.
I just don't. I think Amazon got lucky when they bought Twitch, and I think they bought it for a specific reason. That never happened, but that engagement that Twitch has, it's like 5 billion hours last quarter of engagement of the next generations of spenders.
I know.
I think they have the opportunity to figure it out, but their first whack at it, that was a complete miss. But it's still there, and I think they'll figure it out.
I think there's like some CEO that used to run a CRM company that's over there running enterprise, so maybe he'll figure it out. But we're looking at Twitch, right? We're thinking about what would happen if we did CCE in a virtual event. What platform would give us the highest level of engagement? And Twitch is looking like a great option, right? Mm-hmm. You could have our folks drawing the digital graphical recording from Heather, right? You're on main stage, and then let's call on Brent, let's call on Nicole, let's call on Ginger, let's get them all together, right? That is that's awesome, right? To be able to do that as you're coming into these segments, right? And so I think there's something between Twitch, StreamYard, and a couple other tools we're thinking about pulling together to have kind of a very interesting event. But right now, I wish I could convince the county that can we safely put more than 100 people or 50 people in this ballroom? I don't think so yet. So it's getting a little scary.